It's that time of the year again when I make one of these reviews. The reviews that I add loads of filler into and most of the time go off topic. So, today marks the third anniversary of, in my opinion, the best Thomas special to ever live and ever will live. The Adventure Begins. Yes. So, like usual, I'm gonna, do the whole movie in a weird way with my toys, and then afterwards, I'll explain, what I didn't like about the movie, etc., etc. And most of the time, I'll probably, go off topic for a second when talking about the story. Whatever. So, well, actually, I should point out real quick. This marks the fifth anniversary when The Adventure Begins got released in the US. It got released in the UK, in July, I believe. So, yeah. Lucky us. Now, real quick, also, before I get into the whole Adventure Begins story, I should, explain to you guys how I found out about this movie in the first place. So, it was back in January. I can't remember what day of January, maybe middle of January of 2015, when I was on the Thomas Wiki page and I saw some new images of Black James, Green Thomas, Edward with a wide smile, and I was like, "Ooh, this looks cool. I want to know where it's from." And I soon learned. I think the page said it was from The Adventure Begins, so I typed in The Adventure Begins, Thomas on YouTube, and I found the UK trailer. I watched it, and I was broke, but not because of whatever. No, I was broke because I was excited. Oh my god, they're adapting Railway series stories into CGI. And I was literally excited for this movie. Green Thomas, Black James, that's racist. New animation style. It was all so exciting. I just couldn't wait to watch this movie. I was so excited. So I waited. Not really that much new content for the movie besides maybe the reveal of some of the new merchandise, like Wind Railway Black James, Trackmaster Glenn, who some people didn't know the name at the time. Some people thought that the reveal of the Trackmaster Glenn was maybe Glenn or Samson, who hadn't been revealed by name yet. I don't know. But yeah, it was all so exciting. So, on March 3rd of 2015, um, I knew that was when the movie was going to be released in the US. And when I came out from school on that day, the American trailer for The Adventure Begins was released, and I watched it. And when I watched it, I had two questions: why does Sir Thomas have his UK voice, and why does Thomas have the exact same voice that he had in that Thomas Macy Thanksgiving parade video? Okay, so another thing. I did know at the time that Martin Sherman, who was the original American voice for Thomas, he left the series, so he wouldn't be voicing Thomas, Percy, or Diesel anymore. However, I didn't know at the time that Ben Small, who was the UK voice actor for Thomas and Rheneas, also left too. So when I first heard the UK trailer for The Adventure Begins, I honestly thought that was still Ben Small voicing Thomas, because John Hassler and Ben Small's Thomas voices kind of sound somewhat identical, but their Rheneas voices definitely sound identical. As for Thomas, when I first heard his voice in the US trailer, I recognized it because in 2014, when Thomas was going to be making his appearance in the Macy's Thanksgiving Parade, they had a little promotional video, and Thomas had a different voice actor who I didn't know the name at the time, and that was him voicing him in The Adventure Begins. And I was also confused why Sir Thomas had his UK voice. At first, I thought it was a mistake, but then when I watched this new season 19 episodes in Star Wars Legend Lost Treasure later on that year, I soon realized that Keith Wickham would most likely be voicing Sir Thomas Hatt in the US dub from here on out. So yeah, Thomas is now voiced by Joseph May, and you know, I'm kind of good at the voice because I'm so used to it. But yeah, but at the time I didn't know who the voice actor's name for Thomas was. So yeah. Okay, now that that's over, let's start the special, shall we? So, the special begins with a beautiful, gorgeous, fantastic opening. Like, the soundtrack for the intro is beautiful. I love how the beginning starts from the cloud showing the whole island of Sodor, which was amazing. They go through the docks to the Green Hills farm, etc. Then they go towards the tunnel, which the rails are clipping through. Then Gordon steams out with a new series catchphrase, and it was beautiful. Okay, I sound sarcastic right now, but that's only because I'm trying to make this video humorous, like all my other videos. Someday I gotta make a serious video. I'm gonna make a dark video someday for Halloween. Whatever. So yeah. Goran pops out, they like show the people behind the movie, like, you know, based on the Railway series by Rev W. Awdry, created by Britt Offcroft, directed by etc, that stuff. So the movie begins and they give like a nice introduction to Edward, who was the first character who was introduced in the Railway series. And, you know, they mentioned how he was the smallest engine at the time, which is actually true in the CGI series, because I'll get to that in a minute, because there's actually a joke on that. So yeah, they introduce Edward, and then they introduce Gordon. Let me actually get Thomas out of the way, he's not introduced till later. And, you know, they're basically about to retell the story of Edward and Gordon, or Edward helps out in the US. And so Gordon mentions how Sir Tom Had's buying a new engine, and he says that the last one they got with the wooden brake blocks, obviously referring to James, which was much too small to be really useful. And then James pops out with his black livery and racism. And when I first heard James's voice be like, "But I'm not small," I was like, what the heck? Did James hit puberty? And there's also a bit of foreshadowing when James's tender passes by Gordon, because his tender was red. So, yeah. So, yeah, when I first heard James' voice, I was like, what? Why did he get a new voice? Because they didn't reveal James's new voice actor in the US dub or any trailer in general for The Adventure Begins. So I had no idea that Carrie Shell wouldn't be voicing James anymore. But, yep, now James is voiced by Rob Rackstraw on the American dub, aka the person who voiced Spud and some other characters in Bob the Builder. So yeah, I've also gotten used to his voice. It's pretty good, but I'll always miss Carrie Shell as James. So yeah, I never understood why Carrie Shell stopped voicing like James and Sir Tom Hamm in the first place. Like, I mean, he's still part of the team, voicing Gordon Henry, so why? Criticism? I don't know. But yeah, so James is like, I might not be as big as you, Gordon, but I'm bigger than Edward. And looking back on that scene now, I chuckle because I mentioned this a couple of times. If you know, James's CGI render in the CGI series, he's actually bigger than Gordon. So he's not only bigger than Edward, he's bigger than Gordon. At least, like, funnel and cab wise. So yeah, they retell the story of, you know, Edward and Gordon, with Gordon struggling up the hill with these messed up children, and he gets stuck. So we get introduced to the man on top, Sir Tom Hatt, or the Fat Controller if you want to body shame him, but he can't help it. If his mom is fat, then of course he's gonna be fat too. So he sends Eddie to go get Gordon, and we get some awkward scenes, like with Gordon and Edward's facial expressions when they're like, I can't do it. I will do it. I can't do it. I will do it. So, unlike the episode where, you know, after when Gordon abandoned Edward, Edward just chases him, he gets fed up, and, you know, he makes a angry face. So yeah, Edward returns back to the yards and he overhears James talking to someone, and he soon realizes that it's the new engine, aka Thomas. So he comes in and he's shocked to discover, oh crap! You weren't supposed to see him. He's shocked to discover that the new engine is a tank engine. So yeah, the narrator is like, this engine had 6 small wheels, a short stumpy bunker, a short stumpy dome, short stumpy funnel. They said it in the wrong order than how it was in the Railway series and the TV series. So yeah, Edward's shocked about the new engine. By the way, Thomas is actually supposed to be green, but I don't have a green Thomas nor a black James. I used to have a black James, but it's gone. Like 90% of my other trains that I had back in 2015 when my channel first started. Whatever. Okay. So, Thomas introduces himself. Edward tries to not insult him because, he's still surprised that he's small. Gordon pops in. He's a sizist to Thomas, saying that Sir Tom had made a mistake on hiring a small engine. And, yeah, I don't like Gordon. I'm just kidding. I like him. But yeah. So Edward and James introduce themselves to Thomas. And then Sir Tom Hatt comes in with his assistants. I don't have the blonde one. So yeah. He introduces himself too. And then when Thomas, says, pleased to meet you, he forgets to call him Sir. And Edward has to whisper it to him. And Thomas learns. And one funny gag. Sir Tom Hatt says, now, as you can see, I'm a very busy man. And if you look at the faces on Sir Tom Hatt's assistants, you can see them smirking at each other like, yeah, busy man, my butt. Yeah, that's funny. So, Sir Tom Hatt just tells Thomas that Edward will show him what to do, and then he nearly trips. And yeah, they walk away and they laugh. And then we get, I was gonna say retelling, but no, that's not the word. What's the word I'm looking for? Yes, remake. We hear a remake of the classic song, He's a Really Useful Engine. This is the first version of the song, where they don't refer to Thomas as number one, they just say he's the one. So yeah, Thomas is working in the yard, he's making mistakes and stuff, and at one point before the scene of Thomas going past Nafford or something, like with Gordon passes by, there's an engine pulling freight cars in the background, and you may not be able to tell who it is at first, but that's actually Salty. Yeah, Salty makes an appearance in the movie, and it confuses me because I'm guessing it's supposed to be like a reference to the Marklin engine in the classic series on how he was always in the background, but you could hardly ever see him. And they use Salty to take his place in the movie, so yeah. One song later, Thomas wakes up Gordon. Gordon plots his revenge, and then it's a thunderstormy night and all. So, Thomas comes back to the sheds, which has 7 berths for some reason, even though the other 3 scrubs haven't been introduced yet. And then we get introduced to Henry. Henry, to people, that makes no sense. Henry is a mixed bag in this movie, as what some people say. Like, pretty much everyone who reviews The Adventure Begins will always have, a problem with Henry in some way. Some people have a problem with Henry's personality in a movie because he's a wuss, like how he's been portrayed in the CGI series since, I don't know, the beginning of the CGI series. And, some people have a problem with that, some people don't. I don't have a problem with Henry being a wuss. In fact, I prefer it, and I don't blame him, because I'm a wuss too. However, a problem that everyone agrees on about Henry is the fact that he's in his new shape. You know what? No. I'm not going to be that one person who says that Henry being in his new shape is a problem. I don't care if Henry is in his new shape or not. I mean, it would have been nice if he was in his old shape, but I'm not going to be that one person who just... I can't say that word. Who just complains about Henry being in his new shape, okay? Like, Who knows? Maybe the Flying Kipper incident never happened, or maybe it just happened before, like, the events of The Adventure Begins. Some people have made theories about that, like Rob the Green Engine, I believe. He made a theory about Henry possibly having the Flying Kipper crash before the events of The Adventure Begins. So I like that theory. Let's just pretend that's happened. That's the reason why Henry's in this new shape. I'm gonna run out of time, so of course I'm gonna have to split this into two parts. See you in part 2.